Since I've done a challenge run on being Persona 3 and 4 only using the protagonist, you probably expected me to do the same for Persona 5, but I can't do that because there are already a couple of videos on that. So instead of doing a Joker only run, I thought of a good alternative, and that is if you can be Persona 5 Royal only using the girls. The rules are quite simple. Number 1, for the first 2 palaces, the boys are not allowed to attack, heal, or support. One thing I'll say though is that they are allowed to revive on until we get Makoto, and I'll explain why later. Number 2, I'll be playing on a new save on Merciless difficulty. 3, DLC is allowed. 4, the run begins on Ann's Awakening fight. And rule number 5 is a little twist that I'll throw in later in the video just to make things interesting. Some things I also want to mention is that 1, this will not be an accurate telling of the story, so I suggest you click off if you want to avoid spoilers. And 2, I am not going to be covering anything that's irrelevant to the run just to make this video as short as I can. With all that out of the way, let's get right into the run. Now because the run begins on Ann's Awakening fight, there is really no reason to cover anything that happens before it, but long story short, Joker robbed the casino, gets arrested, we have to explain to Sai why the girls are better than us, we go back to where it all started when Joker and Ryuji first encounter Kamoshida's palace, they both get a persona, met some cat from another dimension, Ann finds out about all this, gets a persona as well, and now the run begins. That was over an hour of gameplay explained in 10 seconds by the way. Our first fight of this run is nothing too hard as this shadow dies to 3 Agi hits since he is weak to fire. After that, Ann joins the team, and we begin to infiltrate Kamoshida's palace to search for his treasure. Now for just the very beginning, it was a little rough, obviously because Ann is all on her own, but as I keep fighting shadows, I learn more about which shadows are okay to fight and which aren't for now. Enemies like Pixie, Pyrojack, Silky, and Mandrake are okay as we can hit their weaknesses or kill them very easily with our SMG. But shadows that are basically a horse are the ones you want to avoid as they are too strong that it takes forever to kill them, and they also kill us in a hit or two. After spending some time grinding out the shadows on the second floor, we get onto level 7 and unlock her most broken move, Dormina. Dormina is a skill that almost guarantees sleep on enemies, which gives us a chance to do a technical hit that deals a lot of damage, and if we're lucky enough, we can get a second turn from doing so. So now Ann being on her own isn't going to be too bad for fighting normal enemies now, but bosses slash mid-bosses are going to be something else, as our first mid-boss, the Heavenly Punisher, happens to be immune to ailment. However, this fight isn't even hard at all as he only attacks once and at least gives us 2 turns to heal if he hits Ann. The fight just takes too long as he doesn't take a lot of damage, but nothing too difficult about it. As for mid-bosses that aren't immune to ailments however, they were all a complete joke. The only thing I would worry about when doing all of this is SP because Ann is going to be using so much of it, but since I allow DLC, I am provided with a bunch of SP items, and the game will also provide you with many more as you go on. Just make sure you don't use too many of them in the beginning because it's best you save a lot of SP items for endgame, especially Soma's. After securing the route to the treasure, I send the calling card and fight Shadow Kamoshida. Now remember how earlier I said that the boys are allowed to revive Ann for now? Well that's because in early game, all the teammates are so weak that they die very easily. Even throughout this whole palace, Ann has just been dying in a hit or two. This was the main reason why I allowed Joker to revive Ann because I don't know any other way to get through any of the fights without her dying very easily. There probably is a way to get around without dying that I don't know of, but either way it's not much of a big deal for now. But anyways, for this fight, the only difficult part was the first phase as he has 2 turns, and once again, Ann just dies too easily. But once we get rid of the cup and kill Shiho, he just only attacks Joker. Yeah, I'm not kidding you. Literally all he's been doing was attack Joker and just letting Ann beat the crap out of him. I don't know why this is a thing, but hey, I'll take it. So yeah, just make sure Joker doesn't die and the fight is set. After beating this palace, I spend some time with Ryuji and Takemi, and we meet Maruki. Later, we also meet an artist named Yusuke who invited us to a Sensei Madarame's exhibition, and soon after that we become skeptical of this Madarame person. First, we discover mementos and fight one of Madarame's former pupils, defeating him with the same Dormina tactic, and later he tells us that Madarame does nothing but plagiarize others' artwork and make NFTs out of them, which is something we definitely can't accept. So we make him our next target and infiltrate his palace. Once again, no shadow was any match against our Dormina tactic, especially Shikioji, and yes, I may have died a few times against him, but we then hit a roadblock where we have to do something inside of Madarame's own shack to unlock the area ahead of us. Luckily for us, Yusuke had offered On to be a model for his nude portrait, so we accept, and Morgana was able to open the door for us while On was seducing Yusuke. However, he got so horny after that he didn't want to leave On and followed us into the metaverse, and awakened to a persona where we get ourselves into another awakening fight. And this one was very frustrating to do because, if you couldn't tell, it's 5 against 1. Now I won't lie, the Koppa Tengus weren't that bad as Miragi does a lot of damage to them, and I could even burn them as well and follow it up with a technical hit with Garu thanks to P5R's new belt items where I can use other magic skills besides fire. But they can be annoying if every time my hits miss because they always use Tsukukaja. And they even have Ippon Datara backing them up. And speaking of which, once I was able to get rid of all the Koppa Tengus, Ippon Datara really wanted to put my RNG skills to the test because if he wipes out the whole party, he'll just keep attacking On and there's nothing I can do about it as Sledgehammer's a one-hit kill. You need to have insane luck to be dodging this man's attack as much as you can and even hope the boys can tank because no way in heck is this even happening with him always targeting On when everyone's dead. And technically this isn't cheating because I never made it a rule where the boys can tank because of forced situations like this and before. Once we defeat him, Yusuke joins the team, meaning now we can remove party members and On is now completely on her own. And it really felt no different as once again all the mid-bosses couldn't handle the power of sleep, and just like that we reached the end of the palace, meaning it's time to send another calling card and fight Shadow Madarame. For the first phase, all you really gotta do is defend until the game asks you if you want to splooge all over Madarame.
You what?
Once you do that, he'll be weak to everything so you can take down all the portraits easily. Then we begin the next phase where he summons different versions of himself based on each magic type. The only thing you have to worry about here is the real Shadow Madarame using his true artist grace, which thankfully he missed both times, so now we don't have to worry about him trying to kill us anymore. As for the other versions, what I did was kill the ice with fire, and I killed the other ones with the wind and electric items I have, so then we can have all fire versions of Madarame. I felt like this was the best thing to do since On resists fire, and the worst that can really happen is if all of them attack her at once. We're also even lucky that sometimes they don't attack, which gives us time to heal, if we're very low on health. But with the actual Shadow not taking much damage, we were gonna be here for a while. And after a good 40 minutes of doing all this, yeah, I'm not kidding, we were able to take him down. It's not hard, it just takes very long since On can't do that much damage. After that, we continue to hang out with friends and best girl Kasumi, but then ex-best girl Makoto gets jealous and will expose our identities to the police. She'll let us go only if we A. do the deed with her, or B. continue the run and change a man named Kanashiro's heart. We kindly choose the second option because we ain't no simp, and I definitely didn't say all of that just to make you angry. As we enter Kanashiro's palace, Makoto awakens to her persona, and now that we finally have the second girl on the team, that means Joker is no longer allowed to revive anyone, and if both On and Makoto die, it counts as a game over and we reset. Now this awakening fight is actually going to show you how broken this duo is, as first we hit Suiki with his weakness, Baton Pass, put everyone to sleep, and sweep this entire... sweep this entire set of shadows. And it's not just these shadows, but literally every mid-boss were no match for this duo. All On just has to do is Dormina and Makoto to follow it up with whatever she has for a technical hit, and we're done with the palace. Yeah, this duo is actually broken. Now before we talk about the boss, I just want to mention very quickly that in this palace we're introduced to a new move called Showtime. Showtime is a powerful attack involving 2 party members. However, there's literally only one Showtime where we have 2 girls attacking, and that is Haru and Makoto's, meaning any other Showtime is banned as they all have a boy in them. Of course, this one is scripted so it doesn't count. Anyways, after that, I do a little mementos grind and then send the calling card to fight Shadow Kanashiro. The first phase of this fight takes pretty long as his Piggytron takes forever to destroy. It was also annoying having to deal with his fear gas as I got hit with it every time, but luckily for us we don't take much damage from whatever he does. The only thing you want to watch out for is his March of the Piggy as it is a one-hit kill if you don't block. After we defeat Piggytron, we get into the second phase where he summons a bodyguard and a hitman. This part I was not prepared for, as Kaneshiro is literally using our strat against us, and he's able to get everyone asleep and kill both of the girls, meaning we have to restart the fight. This time I made sure and equip a Fortify Spirit for both On and Makoto, so now this time his lullaby doesn't connect as much. The plan for this phase now was to take out his guards first, and luckily for us we can still use our Dormina strat on them. After that we go after Shadow Kaneshiro, and as you attack him you want to make sure you're fully healed because he will then throw out his Make It Rain move, which nearly kills you. But after that the fight is pretty much over as he doesn't attack again after that. Now that we're done here, I spend my free time doing the usual, ace my exams thanks to Takemi's drugs, max out An's Confidant, and then begin Makoto's. Later, we get a message from someone named Alibaba saying that she wants to steal a girl named Futaba's heart. We find out that Alibaba is actually Futaba, and once we get the palace information from her, we explore her palace. This palace pretty much went exactly the same as it did in the last one, and a lot faster too since it's the easiest one, so there's really nothing to talk about here. We secure the route and give Futaba the calling card, but instead of fighting her shadow, we fight a Karen because why not? At first we were struggling and we didn't know what to do, but then Futaba came to the rescue and awakened to her persona, and now is the real deal. And now, it's time we get to talk about some things that I've been wanting to share with y'all for a very long time. Now first off, half of her damage is already gone as Futaba summons a ballista and we use it to bring her down. Futaba also assists as well by reflecting her moves. After we knock her down, you have to use physical moves as they do a lot of damage to her. Then she gets back up and starts being annoying. But don't worry, this fight can end in just a few seconds once we get our... I said this fight can end once we get our... Okay, now game, what the actual f***? Now I don't know if this is a bug or anything, but for some reason the game isn't allowing us to shoot her with the ballista a second time. No matter how much time I spend or how many times I hit her, the game isn't even gonna give it to me, which is really bad because magic skills are very weak against her and I can barely get a quarter of her HP down. I think this might also be important to bring up as well, but a few months ago I was doing another run where you can't use Joker, which was cancelled because someone else beat me to that. But anyways, the same thing was happening too. You could even see that she was about to die, and still, no ballista. And then literally, I kid you not, the craziest thing happened here that I don't think anyone even knows about this. Can you guess what happens next? A. The game crashed. B. I cheated. C. She uses Meggy DeLown. Or D. She corrupted the save file, meaning I have to start the run all over again. We'll reveal the answer after I quickly say that if you're all enjoying the video so far and want to see more like this, make sure to leave a like and definitely subscribe to the channel. It helps this video out a lot, so I really appreciate if you do so that I have a good reason to continue making these challenge runs. And with all that said, let's reveal the answer. Yep, that's right. She uses Meggy DeLown. Bet you weren't expecting that, right? And no, this ain't modded or anything. This is actually real. Yeah, Meggy DeLown in the 4th palace. Only in challenge runs is when I encounter this type of bullcrap, am I right? But yeah, here we are a few months later, and nothing's changed. At this point, I don't even know how this fight works anymore. I thought the second ballista shot was scripted, but apparently it isn't, and we have to deal with this instead. But after numerous attempts, a waste of a Soma, Joker having to attack.
Wait a minute!
I literally didn't care anymore at that point, okay? But after doing a repeat of what I just said, minus Joker attacking, I finally got the ballista, shot her down, and the fight is over because she doesn't attack again at this point. Seriously, this was all that was needed to win. I don't know why the game kept acting dumb and put me through all of that, and it's even weird that she uses Megidolan. And it even seems like no one knows about this. Not even the wiki knows about it too. So it seems like I may have discovered something new. But yeah, I think I've dragged this on for too long now, so we're gonna move on. After this palace, we enjoy the rest of our summer break by hanging out with friends, ranking up social stats, grinding in mementos, fuse a million personas because Joker isn't allowed to negotiate, and it was back to school where right off the bat we go on a trip to Hawaii, and then our principal dies. We talk about the incident and it somehow causes Morgana and Ryuji to get into a fight, and then Morgana wanted to prove that he can be useful to us, and failed miserably. We go into the palace to find him, and not long after, we encounter a beauty thief, as that's what she refers to herself as. Turns out, Morgana actually did something useful and found us another girl for the run. But she refuses to join us, and after chasing her down, her fiance caught her for us. Haru tells us about him and her father, and they're really bad people, which means we gotta change her father's heart next. We go back to the palace the next day and encounter Shadow Kumura and Haru's cognitive fiance. As she was about to get abused by her fiance, her persona awakens and saves her. And since this is Haru's awakening fight, he's going to be weak to Sai moves. So now, as you can all see, we have all 3 girls in the party. And I know what you're thinking. This run isn't going to be much of a challenge anymore, and it won't even be that interesting to watch now that I'm not even going to suffer. Well, remember at the beginning of the video when I said that rule number 5 would be a twist that I'd mention later on? Welp, rule number 5 is that only 2 girls can be in the party. And no, Futaba doesn't count. I thought this would be a cool twist because having only 2 girls does make fighting bosses challenging, whereas having all 3 of them is basically normal and there wouldn't be anything hard about it. Now before we continue exploring this palace, I decided to fuse a bunch more personas so then when the fusion alarm goes on, I can itemize them and gain Mas skills for the girls, because for this palace it's going to be very important to have different magic skills, and you'll see why. Throughout this whole palace, we fight a bunch of robots that are weak to different magic skills like fire, nuke, and such. This time we have to rely on hitting their weaknesses as our sleep strat isn't going to work. All of these fights are to lead up to the Okumura fight where all he does is summon the same robots we've been fighting throughout this whole palace. Before this fight, I itemized some personas to get a Mazionga and a Magarula belt, since they're going to be very important. An and Haru will also be my duo for this fight as well. Now the first set of robots are all weak to fire, the second set is weak to Sai, the third are weak to electricity, the fourth are weak to wind, and the fifth are weak to Sai. All I gotta say is that for the 4th and 5th sets, make sure you attack them after a baton pass because they are hard to take out normally, especially with Okumura giving them defense. I also got unlucky by An trying to save me and went down to 1 HP, then Haru got hit with a crit and they both died, so I had to do this fight again. But once we've defeated all of them, Okumura summons one giant robot. This robot is pretty much the real boss fight as he actually functions like one since he isn't weak to anything, is immune to ailments, and is very strong. The only thing you have to worry about is his Big Bang order, so make sure you debuff him and guard. I also took advantage of Haru's Tetrakarn as he was taking a lot more damage from reflecting his moves. As he gets down to a few hundred HP, he starts using Big Bang every time. But thanks to our luck by Futaba's buffs and being able to dodge, and take some big risks, we were able to defeat him. The fight could have been a lot easier if I had maxed out Ifumi's Confident a lot sooner so we can swap Haru for Makoto, but at least I'm lucky Futaba saved me from having to spend hours with this fight. After we defeat him, Shadow Kumura uses his daughter as a bomb and fails. Then the real Haru gets triggered that he sees her that way and she brings out the axe. And you know it's bad when Haru has to bring out the axe. Shortly after we beat his palace, we find ourselves in another one and find Kasumi in there. She awakens to a persona and shows Joker how cool she is. As a matter of fact, she thinks she's so cool that she refuses to join us after we offered. Okay, we get it. You didn't need any help. After sadly getting rejected, Okumura dies, and somehow it is our fault and now the world hates us. We find out that we've been set up for the past 2 palaces, and now we're trying to find a way out of this situation. Akechi then tries to tell everyone that this wasn't our doing, and on top of that, he even found out that we were the Phantom Thieves. He offers to help prove our innocence if we change Nijima's heart, but only if we agree to disband the team after. We have no choice but to take the offer and begin to infiltrate Nijima's palace. Now we've gotten to a point where ailments aren't going to work on most mid-bosses anymore, but almost every mid-boss here is weak to something, so it didn't matter. The only one that gave me trouble was Rajanaga as he isn't weak to anything, and is also immune to ailments. so I had to take my time with him. And also, the fights where Joker had to be on his own don't count. After we finish securing the route, Akechi tells us that it's best we send the calling card the day before the deadline. So we spend our time hanging out with everyone and Maruki for one last time. And it was now time to send the calling card. Now the beginning of the fight is rigged in her favor, but once we expose her of cheating, she turns into Leviathan, and now the real battle begins. The way this phase works is that she'll use the roulette to determine which magic skills to use. Since I have An and Haru on the team, the ones I want her to land on are Ice and Nuke because she takes a lot of fire damage when on ice and a lot of side damage when on Nuke. And getting hit by weaknesses is nothing to worry about as I have the Bleeding Dry Brush ability from collecting the will seeds in Madarami's palace. After half of her damage is gone, the roulette will land on the Almighty spot, which is the worst part of the fight as now she's so strong that... just use physical ointments. After we defeat her, we're now back to where we started. Now that Sai knows the whole story, she also wants to play a part in this run. So we give her a phone that sends Akechi to the metaverse so that he can kill a cognitive Joker, while she gets the real one out of here and brings us back to our friends. And after that, we find out that Akechi has been working for someone named Shido who's running for Prime Minister, and turns out they've been setting us up the whole time for their own benefits. So we make Shido our next target and explore his palace. The mid-bosses were all weak to something, so they weren't much of a challenge. The only ones that gave me trouble are the Will Seed and Shadow Cleaner fights. For the Will Seed fight, I just had to be lucky and hope that An's Mapufala could freeze everyone, and when the enemy charges, you can just use a physical ointment. As for the Shadow Cleaner, I literally couldn't do any damage to him, so I had no other choice but to use ointments as it's the only way I can do damage to him. After we beat him, Akechi shows up and decides to challenge the girls. What's funny here is that he literally thinks he could win by copying Joker, and that's just by letting his allies attack for him. Yeah, that clearly didn't work out for him. Once he starts fighting, he only attacks Joker, so this was just a free win for the girls. But he doesn't give up just yet as he awakens to his true form. Now everyone, please don't make fun of me for this, but you see, I can't do any damage to him. The girls die very easily. The only way I can be doing damage to him, while also trying to survive, is by using ointments. Now, I know this sounds like a corny way to get around this fight, but what am I supposed to do really? No matter what I do, nothing even does crap to him. And remember, if both girls die, it's considered a game over, so that just makes the fight 10 times stressful. It's really dumb, but I've attempted this fight a lot of times and it's the only way to defeat him. So yeah, we defeat Akechi, reach the end of the palace. After doing a mementos grind and a few nights in the jazz club, I send the calling card. Now first off, for some reason we're forced to have a full party, so I switched out Haru for Morgana so that he can die. Now after that Akechi fight, I was really worried about how this fight was gonna go, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it'd be. In the first phase, he's immune to physical, so you can only do magic skills on him, and thankfully we can do a lot of damage this time. The only thing you need to watch out for here is his Arm of Destruction. In fact, in every phase he does a strong move like that, so make sure you guard when the game gives you that warning. The second phase he now resists all magic skills, so it's best you use physical moves, especially when it does more damage than a concentrated Agadine. And in the third phase you can hit him with anything. And with that, we've taken out the human sacrifices, but things aren't over yet as Shido goes Super Saiyan. This form, however, was no different from before as I can still do damage to him, and surprisingly the girls can take 3 hits from him without dying. And his true form was even a joke because you can just reflect his Tyrant's Fist and the fight is basically over as he challenges Joker to a 1v1, which of course is not going to count since we can't do anything about this. We win the fight, and now Shido's heart's been changed. So now he confesses to all the crimes he's done, and now the people should still be voting for him. Wait, what? Okay, for some reason people are still voting for Shido despite him admitting to his crimes, and on top of that, everyone is acting like the Phantom Thieves never existed. Something doesn't seem to be right here, so we decide to look into mementos for some answers. We then reach the depths of mementos and encounter the Holy Grail, which we believe is the treasure of this place. As we fight him, the people around us keep healing him, making it impossible to beat him. Because we can't beat him, he kicks us out of the metaverse and erases us from existence. But then we got revived by the twins, so we return the favor by fusing them back to Lavenza. We also find our teammates there, and once we reunite, we go back for a rematch. But before we can do that, we encounter a bunch of angels on our way. They were all not even hard since we can do a good amount of damage on them, especially with Michael where we can hit Angel with Curse and Baton Pass for a heavy amount of damage. I also leveled up to 90, gave on the Kuzunoha emblem, and Makoto President's Insight, and now it was time for our rematch against the Holy Grail. Before we can even fight him, we have to cut the wires connecting to everyone around us, so we do just that, and now he can't be healed anymore. This fight is where you want to be careful because for some reason he can nearly kill you off of just one arrow light even with defense, and there's also his Eternal Light, but since we're very strong we were able to get through this quickly. But he doesn't give up just yet as he turns into his true form, Yaldabaoth. And now was the moment you've all been wanting to see. Beating the final boss of the game with only 2 girls. Now I'm gonna be honest, it is so complicated to explain what even happened in this fight. It was too hard that so many things were happening. We've encountered so many close calls, having to deal with all the bullcrap with his weapons. It was such a stressful fight, but because of how interesting this fight is and how it was played out, I've decided that I'm going to upload the full battle in a separate video. All I'm going to say is that SP management is very important. As I said in Kamoshida's Palace, it's best you save a lot of SP items for endgame, because if you don't, you're actually screwed here. In my first attempt, I even ran out and I was doing so good. You pretty much have to do everything very carefully here. It was not an easy fight to do, but we were able to succeed. And at this point you all know how it goes. The public cheers for us, Joker awakens to such denial, and we tell him to screw off. And now, this is the part where I can say that yes, you can be Persona 5 Royal only... Oh wait, that's right. I'm playing Persona 5 Royal. So while we were fighting Yaldabaoth, Maruki awakened to a persona, and just before the metaverse could disappear, he used the palace where Kasumi awakened to a persona and tampered with mementos to create a whole reality where everyone can be happy. While yes, this sounds like a good thing, the con of this is that we will all be under Maruki's control, and we can't let that happen. As we confront him, we find out that Kasumi is actually Sumire, and after a little talk with him, he tries to influence our decision of accepting his reality by having us look at it ourselves, and after a week, we still refuse to accept. But Maruki still refuses to accept our decision, so now we have no choice but to settle it with violence. But before we can fight him, he makes us explore his whole palace, and I gotta say, the mid-bosses were quite the challenge until I found out that you could use ailments on them. And once we finished securing the route, I spend the rest of my time maxing out Futaba and Sumire's confidence, worked on the third awakenings, and spent every night at the jazz club. Once the time has come, we meet up with Maruki at the top of the palace, and it was time to finally put an end to this run. Now one thing I want to say is that Maruki is a literal tryhard. Like seriously, using ailments, not allowing us to do a certain move like healing at the worst moments. And I should also mention that if the fight takes too long, he starts using Megidolaon every time, and there's nothing you can do about it. But after a few attempts, I came up with a strat. First off, you want to know the weaknesses of all the tentacles. Some are weak to fire, nuke, and physical, so this works out perfectly for An and Makoto. And make sure you get rid of them every time too, because they can cause a lot of trouble. Now what I did here is hit all the tentacles that are weak to fire, and then baton pass to Makoto, but instead of attacking, I either heal or use Rakukaja. Then when it's her actual turn, that's when I hit the tentacles that are weak to nuke, and that's where I baton pass back to An so that she can deal a heavy amount of damage. Repeat this process and you should be able to defeat Azathoth before Maruki can start using Megidolaon. And if there's one thing I learned from my previous attempts, take as many risks as you can. You have An and Makoto being able to live at 1 HP, Futaba's rank 10 ability, her third awakening ability where she can revive the party. With all of these abilities, take all the risks you can because you don't have many turns to be able to defeat him. With all that said, I was able to defeat Maruki, but he doesn't give up just yet because he doesn't know how to take no for an answer. Told you he's a tryhard. He then awakens to Adam Kadmon, and this phase was just a repeat of the Kamoshida fight where he just attacks Joker only. And with the next phase being scripted where Joker finishes it off, now I can finally say that yes, you can beat.
Nope.
Oh, great, there's more!
Alright, that's it, no more fights! But yes, you can be Persona 5 Royal while only using the girls. I gotta say, this was a pretty stressful run to do, especially with the fact that I've restricted the party to only 2 girls. If I were to rate how hard this run was, I'd give it a 7 out of 10, only because the endgame was so rough, and Cognitive Wakaba too. But that is it for this video. If you enjoyed it and want to see more like this, remember to leave a like, subscribe, and comment on what more you want to see. With all that said, I hope you guys have a good one, and I'll see you all in the next video.